Hi there, and welcome to the CyberHut TV vendor introduction series brought to you by the CyberHut. My name is Simon Moffat. I'm founder and research analyst at the CyberHut. And in these vendor introduction series, I get to speak with amazing leaders all across the globe trying to solve some of today's most exciting identity and access management and cyber security problems. And I'm absolutely thrilled to have three of the team from StackBob with me today. We've got Ole, Yarrick, and Nick. Hi, guys.
Hey,
Morning, afternoon, Simon. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Look, I'm outnumbered 3-12. This is fabulous. We've got three huge brains.
I can leave it to help.
Three huge brains here, which is fabulous to understand a little bit more about the sort of area you guys are looking to develop solutions for. And for those viewers who've not seen one of these episodes before, I essentially ask our three esteemed guests three very important questions to understand a little bit more about their mission and vision to solve some of today's problems. And I always start off with the same question, which is essentially, what is the problem that StackBob is looking to solve? Over to you guys.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Really, the biggest problem StackBob is trying to solve here is visibility and realization of value. A lot of organizations have big investments in their different identity governance platforms out there. Have been working for years on connecting target applications, importing users, groups, permissions, managing life cycles, everything else. Um, and you know the typical success metric is around 40%, right? So, of 300 applications for the average organization, you're 40% of those leaves a pretty big population of identities that have not been connected. And it could be due to resource constraints, connector support, just general application accessibility. So the biggest problem we're targeting here is building a connector fabric that's going to move that needle from 40% to 90%, 95% using agentic technology, cutting down the time to build these connectors. If you look way back in the day, 20 years ago, full ICF connectors, even today, to build a full ICF or even a generic scripted connector, you're talking a couple weeks to a month to a couple of months. We're taking that time frame down to days, less than a week, so we can move that needle up to 99, 90, 95%, even 100%, and give those IGA platforms that visibility into all the target users, all the target permissions. So identity teams are really getting that visibility, managing full life cycle, user attestations and everything else are uh, across your entire application ecosystem. And at the end of the day, identity governance purchases, are running at full steam, right? They have full access to everything out there.
It's an interesting thing. IGA, as you say, it's been around probably nearly 30 years, I guess, commercially. The sort of first products emerging, I guess, Sarbanes-Oxley, early 2000s, and they were looking at targeting those top regulated applications and trying to really prove some level of compliance, which was often a little bit spreadsheet driven and sort of access reviews were rushed through, and it didn't really do the compliance mandate the justice it deserved. But you're absolutely right. Back in the day, connectivity was complex. The identity middleware, there was a lot of that on-prem run, operate integration work, which was very, very time-consuming and costly. And it seemed to me, was often resulting in these silos of sort of identity capabilities, often isolated from one another, I think. And I guess my only other aspect, it seems to me the problem statement for IGA has got bigger as well, isn't it? It's not just a case of sort of expanding the traditional IGA use cases to more systems. It seems like we have more IGA use cases, and by that I mean we have more identities, haven't we? As well, we've got more identities, we have more systems, we have different identity types, humans, non-humans, workloads, services. So it seems to me that traditional IGA infrastructure, if you like, looks a little bit Victorian, a little bit rusty, a little bit static and fragile. But I guess that sort of ties into, why is this a problem? Is it simply we have more systems and more stuff to do, or is there something else at play? Is the fact that identities, it's more important. It gives us more sort of visibility into those downstream apps. So why is it purely because legacy tech is catching up with people?
No, I think you bring up a lot of good points here. Is it a number of applications? Is it the number of identities, a number of identity types? Has the risk changed? I think it's a combination of all the above. I don't necessarily think it's a problem now. I think it's been a challenge, from its original inception. If you look back when I got started, early 2000s, right, late 90s, you maybe had one LDAP directory and a couple of databases. You could do fairly simple directory synchronization tools. But as we started expanding over the years, the use cases got more complex. The number of applications got more, kept on increasing. Connectors really, there was never a standard interface for building connectors, right? So application growth went up, the number of applications, as we're seeing over the last couple of years, the standards around applications are changing. You don't have the large enterprise cloud platforms, which arguably have very rich APIs, very rich connectors today. Now you're seeing the rapid growth of these micro applications, vibe coding, kind of community led applications. You look at industries like healthcare that are very engineer focused, right, where there aren't standards. That connector premise, as an architecture, is essentially a very important piece of IGA visibility. How do we connect manage users? So I think it's more of the problems just expanding over the years. It's not necessarily just a problem now. I think it's always been a challenge. It's just our application volume is going up. The standards aren't always applied, like the vibe coding and everything else. So the problem is just getting bigger and bigger, so to speak. So I don't necessarily think it's a problem, you know, now. I think it's been a challenge
Yeah,
throughout the years.
it was always a problem, but now it's getting more and more critical because with all these changes we are going through, right? So all the remote work that started to happen, all the cloud apps that went into the cloud, and then suddenly identity is in the foundation of your cybersecurity for your company, right? Because it would be something like not really sexy. No one was talking about that. And now you can just take a look at the market, what's going on. Everyone is funding those identity governance, identity security platforms because everyone just realized that this is the new security foundation. So, and it was always there, but right now it just gets critical.
It's
Interesting point there. It sounds more to me it's the impact. It sounds to me it's more the impact that's got bigger. Ultimately, I think is not just the problem statement. It's the impact of getting this wrong. Seems to be. You mentioned an interesting thing about the cyber convergence there as well, which is something we've sort of tracked for a number of years. I think as identity is now empowering productivity, but it's also empowering security and revenue for the business. Getting that stuff wrong, getting access request management, access review, onboarding, visibility into apps, getting that stuff wrong, it seems to have a much, much bigger impact than even the compliance-led stuff 20 years ago, because I think ultimately you could get around some of these things. You could fail an audit, but long as you have process in place, or you were on an improvement plan, or you showed you were going to rectify those audit failings. But I think today, it sounds like you're saying that the impact of getting this stuff, it's involving different stakeholders in the business. It's staff onboarding, it's security, it's SaaS application access. I guess there's a bit of visibility in there as well. The sort of identity visibility and intelligence platforms that will merge. They need to see stuff, I guess. And it sounds like you guys are helping people see more. Is that fair?
And control.
Yeah,
not only see but
control more. Yeah,
I guess you can only control what you can see, I suppose, ultimately. And so, how are you guys best placed here? Obviously, we're looking at, I guess, some of the problems that have been around for a long time, and it seems the impact is growing. But it sounds like we just have more solutions. We have more, I guess, tools in our garage that we could use to try and tackle some of these problems. So why is StackBob best placed? What have you guys been working on to try and solve this?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things to look at here. As a team, as a leadership team, on the call, I think we each bring our own unique kind of view of attacking this problem. It's not a singular idea of like we're attacking a standard or we're trying to, fix a specific functionality in IGA. I think we're all bringing our own kind of view of how to solve this, right? Me personally, it's, realizing identity governance. We've been in those rooms, right, with CISOs, with buyers, talking about identity governance as a principle of achieving compliance, right? Automating your identity lifecycle, having visibility across all those applications. And you get, 1, 2, 3, 5 years into these implementation projects. I come from healthcare, you know, highly regulated, highly sensitive, high impact when identity goes wrong, right? You get a couple years in and CIOs and leadership are asking why have my EMR and my critical applications been onboarded yet? We've invested this much money. Why isn't this been done? And you start falling back into those manual methods, right? To where becomes more and more challenging to justify the purchase, or you start looking at alternative vendors. Um, we're focused on that problem of helping organizations realize the benefit from an identity governance perspective. I know Oleg and Yark have kind of their focus on solving the problem. Me personally, it's helping organizations realize the value of their identity governance. Kind of our the focus from a why are we best placed to solve it?
I think that we are pretty much aligned in terms of the vision and the goal we want to achieve. Personally, from my point of view, like I've majored in cybersecurity. My career started with the cybersecurity as an engineering career. I've tried to build a couple of startups, and experience from them comes very handy in this one. Also, me and Oli, we were working together like for 7 years already. We met long time ago, and it was an amazing journey from day one. It feels from for me that Oli is my like dream teammate, and the same stuff happened with Nick when we saw him and when he joined us. So that's an amazing that the team experience from different angles is super brilliant, I would say. Um, I think more to add is from the other side.
Thank you, Eric. Yeah, we definitely bring different experience to the table, and the way Yarik had experience with AI technology before, Nig had experience with solving this problem with clients in traditional ways, and knows the problem in and out, and knows the customers, has amazing network, right? And Yarik has amazing experience with building AI technology. While me on my side, I'm responsible for product management at StackBob, and my responsibility is to make sure that the entire solution is not only innovative in terms of like how we apply this technology, but which also like user friendly. And I can confidently say that the technology we bring to the market is truly unique because we see other startups that also take this problem and want to solve it, but they have different approaches. Our approach is unique in a way that we combine traditional or a new generation agentic browser automation with deterministic scripting, so generating them again through our pre-trained set of LLM models. And at the result, we got the tag, which is adaptable, which can learn any application, but also at the same time, it's reliable, stable, and safe because it just built for very, very narrow specific task, and it's just like pipeline of models. As a result, our offer to the customers is that we can integrate all of your applications without dependency on existing API or other protocols. And we charge our customers just by number of users they want to manage. We don't charge per number of apps. So our goal and vision is just to apply the technology we have to solve this problem and have like really simple product, simple pricing, and maximum impact in terms of like just covering everything, not thinking like, should I integrate this or this app first, because like it's cost, right? With automation we bring, like we can connect virtually anything.
It's fascinating. You mentioned some fascinating things there. The browser angle, that no API thing is interesting as well, because I think there's a lot of legacy or proprietary applications out there which aren't simple. They don't use Skim or even standard sort of REST JSON style ways of approaching there. So is it entirely sort of professional services free, or is it just more low touch? How would you sort of best describe that interaction model there? Putting you on the spot, I guess.
Very simply, I would describe ourselves as a middleware, right? That sits between your IGA and all your target applications. And the way we build the product, it's like fully served service. There is obviously like some part of setup right now, which we sometimes handheld the user to set everything up. But once everything is set up, it's like fully automated and self-service. So we are a technology company. We are not a service company. Nick, you wanted to say something? Sorry for.
Yeah, one thing I was going to kind of add on to that from a professional services IGA perspective, one of the goals has always been accelerating onboarding, automating the application onboarding with the big IGA vendors, but variability, from a different connector, different attribute mapping, everything else has always kind of been a roadblock there. Let's put it that way. With our connector fabric, as Oleg mentioned, right, us being a middleware between the IGA and target applications, we're essentially standardizing that interface. So an upstream IGA, now they can start templatizing, so to speak, target applications with us having the learning framework on the back end for those target applications. So we can start accelerating, the SailPoints, the Savients, the Microsofts, the Pings of the world, that they're more templatized. They can start pushing things in faster. And then as our model learns, right, they've got a single interface that they can just start pushing. So, if we're looking at from a professional services kind of internal team management, right, we're standardizing it upstream. And then our learning model is essentially accelerating the app learning, providing that singular interface.
Right, and it's like the accelerant, it's like the petrol for the bonfire. The flagging IGA bonfire, or the adding the alcohol to the party, or whatever analogy you want to use there. I think it is fascinating. IGA and even PAM to a lesser extent. These areas have been around for a long time, 20, 25 years, and they do get procured, they do get installed. Maybe some of it's shelfware, but they're often in distress, and that they haven't necessarily evolved with the constant change of identity, which really has to align with business transformation and what the business is trying to achieve, which is now hyper competitive. You've got supply chains, you've got SaaS, you've got cloud, you've got all this NHI stuff to deal with as well. So I think it's quite interesting to have an overlay or an augmentation technology to accelerate some of those foundational pillars if they are, I guess, flagging a little bit and not necessarily keeping pace with the modern world. So guys, this has been a fabulous overview of what you guys are doing and building. I think there's quite a big addressable market there to achieve, and obviously you're sort of on this journey to try and do that. So thank you for taking a little bit of time out to explain to us the world of StackBob and how you guys are seeing the world. This has been another episode in our vendor introduction series brought to you by the Cyber Hut. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.